with a quick introduction about who we are and what we are doing, and then we will directly start the HR trends of 2022 with Tom. So last year we did a very interesting talk as well with Tom about the HR trends of 2021, and this made us really prepared for what happened, the changes with the COVID-19 and everything that occurred. And Tom was totally right about his trends. And now we're going to talk about 2022 because it's even more advanced. So now just a quick intro. So my name is Randa Farah. I'm the founder of I Have Learned Academy, which is a place where we share everything that you did not learn at school or university. Because I always ask myself, I wish someone taught me this or taught me that thing before. So if only I knew then what I know now. And basically, I have 15 years of experience in HR. My background is in HR, organizational psychology, and business. I'm certified in happiness at work from Denmark, master NLP practitioner from the US, and I'm a certified trainer in the UK. So I'm also the founder of Leptivity.com, which is a calendar for events, and an instructor at USG. So at I Have Learned Academy, we cover different topics in different categories. You can see them on the screen. And we also organize different conferences, like Dr. John DeMartini, who was in Lebanon. This was the time where we could have like 400 people in one room and hug. This is almost impossible now. And the Happiness at Work conference, where we had also around 400 experts in HR and speakers from Denmark, Sweden, and Lebanon, and different countries. So we also organize lots of various workshops, trainings in our academy and online. So you can check our full program on ihavelearned.me/events. Also, we organize some special events, like, for example, wellness days, Zen days, stress management day, movie nights and discussions, very special topics, like sometimes we have cultural tours. So it's all educational. And we also did, based on the situation that we are living, we did an art exhibition that is a VR art exhibition about arts and politics. So you can go and scroll into this room. I'm sure like Tom loves technology and he will enjoy this. So it's a totally VR exhibition where you can go. It doesn't exist in reality, this room. It's only virtual, and discover everything about arts and politics in Lebanon and 4 other countries. So this was about the Beirut blast, sadly. We also have different partnership with like Saradar Bank, where we offer 2 free talks every month, so you can check them out. Also, we have various like in-house activities, in-house trainings with different companies, international talks, and much more. So just for you to also know more about us, we provide a certification to become a Chief Happiness Officer. This was our first CHO, where we graduated around 14 CHOs in Lebanon, and many of them found jobs, like that was before COVID. And now we are planning to do the next one this year, end of this year. So I also invite you to check our social media, where we have weekly quotes, educational posts, and our upcoming workshops. So you can check them all on our website. So other than our short workshops, we have also programs or certifications, like the NLP practitioner certification. And this is a 6 weeks program to know yourself and discover yourself deeply. We also have, of course, the CHO certification. So without further ado, I would like just to ask you to follow us on social media, our pages, I Have Learned Academy, and check our upcoming events on the website. So without saying longer, I would like to welcome now Tom Haak. So Tom is the director of the HR Trends Institute, which he founded in 2014. Tom follows, detects, and encourages trends. This is his specialty. So in the people and organization domain and in related areas. Where possible, the Institute is also a trend setter. Tom has an extensive experience in HR management in multinational companies. He worked in senior HR positions at various companies like KPMG, Philips Electronics, and much more. Tom has a big interest in innovative HR tech, and how organizations can benefit from trend shifts. So Tom is seen as one of the leading European and global HR thought leaders. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Tom and give you the screen, not the floor. Go ahead, Tom.
Right. Thank you, Renda. And first, I want to compliment you with all your activities. And I know that the situation in Lebanon can be tough, and but you keep your optimism and you organize many activities, and you keep pushing for good HR and other things, happiness, and I'm sure you can use a lot of happiness in Lebanon. So I want to say that up front also. I will be talking about HR trends and what you can do in HR. Yes, I'm not. I can't imagine what it would be if I was in Lebanon and I was in your shoes. Then I would maybe talk differently. But well, bear that in mind.
Yes, we have also an international audience, so don't worry. It's like
all right.
Talk about the HR internationally.
So I hope you can see me and hear me well, Renda. I'm not sure that people see my head on the main screen.
I just recommend that you all click on the view and choose a speaker so that you see Tom in a big screen. So click view speaker up on the right.
Yeah, but I still see you as a speaker. I don't know whether that's the situation.
Yeah, but we see you when we talk.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, excellent. So I'm very happy to be here again. And as Renda said, I was there last year. What I want to do is well, give you a glimpse of what I see as major trends in HR for 2022. And of course, it's my personal opinion. There's a lot more good stuff to find, and I will give some references at the end. If you want to learn more, if you want to see more, I recommend you to do two things. One is a link with me on LinkedIn. Then I share messages and you can follow what I'm doing, and I share content of other good people as well. I also can recommend you to connect to the YouTube channel of me, Tom Haak's YouTube channel. Every 2 weeks, I publish, at least every 2 weeks, I publish a video together with Natal Denk, talking HR trends with Natal and Tom. And that's a nice video, 10 minutes, sometimes a little bit longer, where we talk about important trends in the HR domain. So LinkedIn, YouTube, then you can learn more. I will talk probably for about 30, 40 minutes. There's ample time for questions. Put them in the chat. Renda will facilitate the Q&A session at the end. And it's probably easier to answer the questions at the end than in between. You never know with the internet connection. I'm lucky today to be on holiday. I'm in the Dutch Caribbean on Curaçao, which is a super nice place to be. So I don't want to make you too jealous. But well, that's where I am at the moment. But normally I'm Dutch. So I work out of Amsterdam, but today I'm elsewhere. The big overriding theme for the trends for 2022, I called from adaptation to transformation. And I want to spend some minutes on that, from adaptation to transformation. What we have seen in the last, you could say, almost 2 years during the COVID-19 crisis, we have especially seen a lot of adaptation, also in the HR people domain. Remarkably, many organizations were quite able to adapt. They quickly reorganized, they quickly made sure that those people who could do it could work out of their homes. They installed tougher health and safety measures, etc., etc. We have all seen that. So remarkable adaptation. Now, hopefully, 2022 is a good year for transformation. And we have not seen probably enough of that. We already see some signs that organizations more have a tendency to revert back to the old situation as soon as it is possible. So when I talk about transformation, what type of transformations do I talk about? And I want to mention several dimensions. Of course, a big long-term transformation is the digital transformation of organizations, and under that, the digital transformation of HR. We have seen a lot of that, but also there, a lot of the HR tech solutions, for example, I see, they are automating old traditional practices. So they are reinforcing the status quo instead of using the technology to really transform. We all know, for example, performance management processes. Many tools I see take the old performance management process and then automate it. Of course, that's digitized, but maybe they have digitized something that has or should already have been obsolete. The digital transformation, and we can do a lot there. A second transformation that is important is the leadership transformation. That's the transformation, again, a long-term transformation, but we're looking for, you could say, a tilting point. When is it really going to happen massively? That's the transformation from the traditional view on leadership. The traditional view is there are people at the top, and the people at the top, they know best, and the people at the top are the best people in the organization, and it's all about leadership, etc., etc. That's the movement from that to more distributed leadership. Everybody, in a sense, is a leader, self-managed teams. And we have seen in the COVID-19 crisis that people and teams shown that they were able to cope and deal with the situations. Often far away from headquarters, far away from their bosses, the people sensed, hey, we're able to do it on our own without too much control and direction. And that's what people like. So this transformation has to do with going from centralized top-down leadership to more distributed leadership. Important transformation, and I will talk about it later a little bit as well. The third transformation is around the transformation of the workforce, and it has to do with the leadership transformation as well. And the workforce from the traditional view of the workforce consisting of employees, and employees, they do what their bosses want to, and sometimes I call that to a situation where the employees, the former employees, have moved into more co-creating roles. The employees are the organization, and they are not submissive order takers, but they are people who are co-creating for the benefits of the clients of organization. So the workforce transformation, very important. And another transformation where we have seen glimpses is the transformation of the, you could say, the purpose and the focus of organization, where traditionally it's self-centered, and we are there to make sure that we do our thing, that we earn money, that we capture the market. Well, we all know that traditional view, to a view where organizations are questioning, wondering, how can we as organizations make the world a better place? How can we add value to our communities? How can we add value to society? How can we add value to the world? That's a long-term shift. We see promising signs of that, and that's also a transformation where we hope that 2022 will bring us forward. So 2022, overriding theme from adaptation to transformation, and the transformation on several dimensions, the digital transformation, the leadership transformation, the workforce transformation, and you could say the purpose transformation. And of course, there are other dimensions as well, but I would like to stick to those. So that about the introduction. Now I will talk about the trends I see for 2022. And it's always important to say there are many long-term mega trends in the domain of people and organizations. And I won't go through those mega trends. You can find them on my website. But the mega trends don't change every year. They are there, and they are, you could say, very slowly changing. And many of the current trends are connected one way or another to one of the mega trends. And I will go through my list. For 2022, I've listed 10 trends I find important. And again, it's my view. And of course, you can add many other things. Number one on the list has to do with, and I call that, let's embrace complexity. Sometimes we see that in organizations, but also in society, that people are struggling with the complexity of human behavior. And we know that human behavior is complex and not easy to predict and not easy to steer. We have seen, and I can judge it for the Dutch government, but we have seen that the Dutch government in the last year and a half has been struggling with how do we influence the behavior of the people in the Netherlands with respect to COVID-19. It's not easy. It's not one size fits all. It's not easy to predict. It's complex. And we have to acknowledge that human behavior is complex. And we have to acknowledge that there is science, psychology, other social sciences that can help us to make sense of the human behavior. Unfortunately, in society, but also in organizations, those scientific findings of psychology, of other social sciences are not used enough. We like too much simplicity. And you could also call this trend, let's get rid of the models. If you go to our website, hrtrendinstitute.com, you can find various collections of models that are used in HR. One of the biggest collections is around leadership models. I've collected, I think in the meantime, 120 leadership models. All those models, one, there's not a lot of scientific evidence that when you follow these models, leadership will become better. I have not seen a lot of that. And they don't acknowledge the complexity of human behavior, in this case, of leadership behavior. It's dependent on the context. It's dependent on the team. So there's a lot of dependencies how leadership can be effective. And let's not try to capture that in one model. And you could say, unfortunately, many of those models look the same as well. We try to push people in those models. I'm sure some of you are working on their leadership competency model. My advice to you is don't do that. Stop with your models and saying people should fit in these models. That is not very helpful. We should appreciate the complexity. And it also has a lot to do with personalization. I'm sure I've talked about that to you before. Personalization. Let's take the individual wishes, needs, capabilities, preferences of people into account. And then we can try to find ways to tailor around that. So one plea, embrace complexity, get rid of your models, at least of the models that don't have a good scientific background. And also in personality, there are quite some models floating. For example, the MBTI, Myers-Briggs model, used a lot, but unfortunately, there's not a lot of scientific evidence that people can be really split into 16 personality profiles. So that was number one, embrace complexity. Number two, and I don't want to preach a revolution, but that I called HR as activists. And we have seen, not only in the last 2 years, but in many years, that some organizations are really toxic places. So that's the worst situation you can have, an organization as a toxic place. But there are still a lot of things happening in organizations that we don't like, not only in organizations, but also in society. And on the really bad side, you could say there's abuse, but there are also things like jerky bosses, bosses that kind of abuse people. But there are also practices that we don't like. For example, a good example always is the salary differences between men and women. Men, women. In most countries, also in my country, I'm sure also in Lebanon and other countries, there's still a quite substantial gap between the salaries or the pay of men and women, even if you look at comparable jobs. Why is that? And HR can be more than just, the bystander, the analyzer, say, there is a difference, we notice a difference. No, the activist role is that you really start doing something about it, that you really start saying, okay, what can we do also from the HR perspective to really make those changes happen. And so we see that happening here and there, but hopefully we can see a lot more. So HR as activists, and if you are an HR professional, look at yourself and see, are we strong enough? And are we really advocating the strong values in our organization? And if we see things that we don't like, are we really then taking action? Number 3. And number 3, I take a sip of water. Number 3, I called HR for the ecosystem. And this has to do with what is the scope. You can ask yourself, what is the scope of HR? Is it only the people on the payroll in the boundaries of the organization, or do we add value for other groups as well? There are many other groups that are important for the organization. There's, of course, the flexible workforce. Most organizations, HR does something for the flexible workforce. There are candidates, there are suppliers, there are clients. What do your clients notice of HR? There is the communities, and in the end, there's also the wider society. So is your scope wide enough? And we see the need to widen that scope, because the organization no longer is an organization where the boundaries are clear, where it's only the people on the payroll that matter. We have to look at the wider ecosystem and see how we can add value for all the people there as well, or groups of people there as well. An example, I don't know whether it's exactly right, but I was working with a French company, and their HR teams helped in local communities to set up technical education for primary school children. So, well, we like, also young children need to be aware of technologies and technology better. And we have a lot of engineers in our company. How can we connect those to each other, and so that our engineers and other people help with that education at primary school? Of course, you could say there is a long-term interest for that company over time. They would like to be able to hire more engineers, but that's a long-term perspective. I like that as an example of a company that takes responsibility to help society to make things better. So HR for the ecosystem. Number 4 on my list, I called the end of the employee. And I already mentioned elements of that in my introduction. What people have experienced in COVID-19 is that they were able to do things quite good on their own or in their team without too much steering. So self-managed teams in many organizations that can work quite well. The concept of the employee in a way is still very traditional, as if organizations own the employees. And if you look at the language that you hear or read, I still read a lot about how can we motivate our employees, or even worse is, how can we retain our employees, as if you can, they are not slaves, and people people want to do things on their own. How can we control and how can we monitor? That is starting to move. And I'm sure all of you have read reports about, you could say, still a small revolution going on, but people saying, I don't want it any longer. I want to be responsible. I want to be empowered. I was reading an article in it was the New York Times this weekend, and it was something like the title, people are fed up with their jerky bosses. And that's related to also the term you read a lot is the big resignation. That currently many people have reconsidered their position as an employee and say, well, do I want to go back to that situation? Maybe not. The facts, let's look at the facts. And many people, of course, are still happy to be an employee and are staying an employee, but there are signs that we are reaching a stage that we have to look at what does the new workforce look like? And let's stop talking about employees, maybe stop talking about human resources that's connected to that, but let's look at the people that contribute to the organization and what we can do for them. And let's make sure that we really empower people. So the end of the employee, it will be a slow trend. The first signs are there, and it's worthwhile for yourself to consider that and see what you can do, maybe even to stimulate that trend. Number 5 on the list is the metaverse. And the metaverse is a new term for things that already have started a long time ago. I'm not a specialist. I'm not a metaverse specialist. I recommend you to look at a keynote of Mark Zuckerberg. He held a keynote for Facebook. If you Google Zuckerberg a keynote, there he is quite able to explain what the metaverse looks like. It's basically the next evolution in combining virtual and real worlds. And today we are in a Zoom meeting. Yeah, that's already, you could say, a very rudimentary metaverse, but it would already look a lot different if I am an avatar and we are able to get together in a room together, and you would be able to really see me and experience you. I would be able to see you instead of looking at the black box as today. So combining the virtual and the real world in order to enrich and enhance the experience people have. It's early days, but we will see a lot of developments around the metaverse in the coming years. And of course, with big possibilities for HR in recruitment, in onboarding, in meetings, in collaboration, etc., etc. It fits very nicely with the transformations we want to see. We see, of course, it's a clear element of the digital transformation. So I recommend you to start reading some articles about the metaverse and experiment with it. Of course, there's virtual reality also as one of the early, you could say, elements of the metaverse. So the metaverse is here to come, is here to stay, and we better make sure that as HR, we use the benefits of the metaverse. Number 6 on my list. And number 6, I call forgiving technologies. You could also say adaptive technologies. And I try to explain many, if you look at HR tech solutions and other workforce technology, often it's not so flexible. Some of you will have implemented HR core systems. Well, the HR core systems generally are saying, okay, first let's start with mapping your process. What do your processes look like? Because if we don't standardize and uniform the processes, they don't fit in our system. Forgiving technology is technology that adapts when the wishes, the needs of the user changes. We see it, you see some signs of it in the clothing industry. For example, I buy a shirt. If I, because I'm on holiday, eat too much and I become fatter, then the shirt could be forgiving. So, well, you know, I become a little bit bigger. There are nice examples on that. I think there's a clip on my article about the 22 trends on my website, where you can see that clothing designers are designing clothes that can adapt. Also, when clothes are given in certain countries to brothers and sisters, because there's not a lot of money. So, but if we design clothes that can grow with the people, we need to spend less money, and it's also more sustainable. In technology, I will give you one example. You might have heard this from me before, but for example, in performance management, you can look at the type of manager. For example, if I'm Tom, I'm very experienced, and you know from my psychological profile also that I'm very obedient. So I'm experienced and obedient. Then you know that you don't have to trigger me a lot. If you say, Tom, time for the performance management reviews 22, I will do it. You don't have to send me emails or other messages on the HR system every day. Say, hey, Tom, please do the performance reviews. No, I will do it because I'm obedient and I know what I have to do because I'm experienced. If I'm Tom, the inexperienced manager, who is not so obedient, then maybe the technology needs to be different. Say, okay, Tom, this is the first time that you will do reviews with your stuff. We can help you. Do you want us to guide you through the process? Here's a small learning module. We will track you closer. We will monitor you closer so that we can help you to do the process better. That's adaptive. Adapting in this case to both the seniority and the personality of the manager. And with some imagination, you can find many examples where you say, well, let's not try to push people in one workflow, but let's try to see how we can use the technology to adapt to the personal wishes, needs, capabilities of people. So forgiving adaptive technologies as an important trend. Number 7, and I hope you are still with me. Maybe, Renda, you can say, okay, if you can still hear me.
We are very interested, very interested.
Okay, good. Because it would be a pity if I would be talking to the black box.
They are writing also on the chat with you all the way.
Number 7 is related to the long-term trend. The long-term trend is the movement from jobs more to roles and the underlying skills. That's mainstream at the moment. More and more skills are becoming the main building block of many HR practices. And I think that's a good development. So more looking at skills, less looking at jobs, less looking at experience, less looking at education, but more what are the skills that people have in their portfolio and at what level do they have those skills. Very important, and you can read a lot about that. And it gives also good ammunition and good, possibilities to increase diverse recruiting. Example, what you hear a lot at this moment, I'm not sure it's in Lebanon, but elsewhere as well, people say, oh, the war for talent is back. We cannot find the people, economy is growing, we cannot find the people. At the same time, there are quite some groups of people who cannot find a job. For example, I refer to the Netherlands because that situation I can judge better. That if you're older than 50, 55, it's very difficult to find a job. If you are a refugee and you have just entered the country and you might be very well educated and have a lot of skills, but if you're a refugee and you don't speak the language very well, difficult to find a job. If you have a certain disability, all kinds of disabilities, people with disabilities, have difficulty to find a job. But if you look at the skills of all those people, most of these people have excellent skills in certain areas. So if you look more at, we are looking for these skills and we don't put them together in jobs, then you might be able to find people easier, and you might be able to offer people from more diverse groups opportunities. But then you should let go of those job profiles with the long list of requirements that people have. For a good example always is, and most of those job profiles say you need to be a good team worker. There are jobs where it's not so important if you are a good team worker. And there is the example of people in the autistic spectrum. People with certain level of autism are very good in checking, controlling very meticulous software. Give them an assignment and say, find the mistakes in this code. They can do it excellent, and they can do it for hours and hours and hours. So they have a master skill in error detection. Maybe they are not the best team workers, but who cares? There are many other examples to give, but it's a plea to use skills as the building block, and it's also a plea to really make an effort to make your recruitment efforts more diverse, instead of waning that, oh, there's the war for talent and we cannot find the people. This was number 7. Number 8 is maybe more philosophical, but I like to put it on the list, and that is, where is our real empathy? Where is the real empathy? And I don't know about you, but you hear a lot that people are saying, oh, well, people are so important and people are super important in our organization and we are people focused. But if you look at the practices and if you ask the people, you get a different story. And most organizations are primarily organization focused. We want something, and how can we get our people to do it? So it's all about, yes, people focus, as long as it fits and is neatly aligned with our goals. Real empathy maybe is starting more with the wishes, needs of the people than with the organizational needs, to make it more equal. And that's not so easy. There are good practices that can help. Of course, it has to do with design thinking. If you look at design thinking processes, every design thinking process starts with empathize. Empathize is, do you really make an effort to try to understand what the needs and the wishes of the users of a product, of a service are? Real empathy. And it's in combination with agile methodologies. So long way to go. And be critical. It's not about the word, oh, we are people focused. It's really emphasizing, is really making sure people have a voice, that people are heard, and that the capabilities of people are used in the organization. Number 9, I'm reaching the end of the list. I look at the time. I think I'm still within the boundaries of my slot. Has to do with well-being. And what we have seen is an increased attention to life coaching. Organizations that provide life coaching to their workforce, to their employees. There was a time that organizations, we don't want to have anything to do with the private life of our people. There's work, there's private, and there is a clear boundary, and we don't get involved. They have seen, and this trend was certainly, you could say, accelerated by the COVID crisis. Well, you know, people only have one life, of course, and they have that life at work, they have that life at home, but those lives influence each other very much. And so it's not work is good, private life is not good. We better help people to cope with their situation. So it's not paternalistic. Paternalistic is we know what is good for you. It's not paternalistic. It's more, allow us to help you with things that are important for you. And that might be health, of course. Health and safety is high on the list, but it's also about financial well-being. And I'm sure in Lebanon, that's a big issue. That financial well-being of people is under threat. I don't know exactly what companies can do, but I'm sure that companies can do something. If they say, well, nothing to do with us, well, then people say, yeah, but it's important for me. It's financial well-being, it's physical well-being, it's mental well-being. So there are different aspects, and what we see that organizations more take a responsibility to provide solutions that can help people to deal with those issues. And as I said, I think it's okay as long as it's not paternalistic. Number 10, and it's the last one on my list, and I'm sure you will have some questions. Number 10, I called the split of HR. That has to do with the way HR is organized. And what we have seen, so it's already probably more mainstream than a new trend. What we have seen is that HR is going to be split, especially in larger organizations, in 3 parts. The biggest part is HR operations. That's the core of HR. That's running the HR organization, running the HR machine. Most of the people in HR are in HR operations. And HR operations is super, super important. It's not, let's not call it administration. And let's not judge, say, well, yeah, that's the part of HR we don't like. HR operations is probably the most important part of HR. And most people are in operations. Of course, also in operations, you have the biggest opportunity for automation and intelligent use of technology. The second part, let's call that HR strategy, HR advice, whatever you got. We need some people who work in that domain. That's the people who think, hey, how can we, what are the HR interventions that help us to reach our organizational goals? And you could also call it HR architects. Not many people, but you need some people in that domain. So HR operations, HR strategy, HR architect. And the third area is sometimes called people success. That's the area that's focused on helping people to be successful in work, at work, but maybe also in their personal life. So the life coaching and helping people with coaching people in different aspects belongs in the people success. It's also important that that is a quite independent part of HR, because if they are too much connected, then it does not work well. Because if everything is briefed back to the bosses, and if everything is monitored and everything is all the data is collected, then the trust of people in that it's really for their benefit might be going down. So you see large organizations already making this split, and I predict this is a long-term trend that is also going to happen in smaller organizations. I talked to you about 2022 trends. I talked about the overriding theme from adaptation to transformation on several aspects. I mentioned 10 trend areas, and there are more. And on my website, in my article, you can find references to many other people who have written excellent overviews of their view of the trends for 2022. My plea is not that you look at those trends and say, oh, we have to use everything. That's absolutely not my key message. The mechanism that generally works best is, again, to go back to your big organizational issues. What are our organizational issues we want to solve, we want to deal with? What are the HR areas, the HR practice areas that can help to deal with those issues? And then I recommend you to look at the trends and see which of the trends can help us to increase our impact, accelerate implementation in those areas that are most important for our organization. So there's a lot of room for opportunity. The bottom line is it's excellent times to be in HR. People need good HR, and there's a lot of things we can do and a lot of value we can add. And I wish you success in the coming year. And I give the floor back to Renda to facilitate Q&A if there are any questions. Renda, back to you.
Great, thank you so much. Very interesting indeed. So I would like to see if now from the audience, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. You can write it on the chat box so that we see it first, or you can directly ask. So I see Lamia has raised her hand. So Lamia, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Sam, for this great presentation. I guess my question is more into like for further readings. A lot of the trends that you have mentioned in my mind as you were talking, they really are influenced by the company size, the company culture, the geographies as well, you know, depending on the local labor laws. And I just wanted to know if there was somehow something that you did or somebody else did that offered more granularity to this analysis. Like, how can we translate that? It would be different in Asia, even in Asia, it would be different in China than it would be in South Korea or Australia, or, you know, European laws are very, very stringent and very protective of their workers, as opposed to North America, for example. So is there anywhere we can find a deeper analysis of these trends, as opposed to, you know, like I said, company size, culture, geographies, labor laws, etc.? Because they're very interesting, and I do feel like all of this is intertwined with all of these elements.
Yes, and I thank you for the question. Of course, once the mega trends and the trends generally are global trends. So it's not these are the trends for Western Europe and the US, and the trends in different parts of the world are totally different. That's absolutely not the case. Many of those trends are global trends, but the stage where they are and the stage how they are in their evolution is different. And of course, that's dependent on geography, that's dependent on the political situation and context, it's dependent on the legal situation. As I said, my starting point would not be an in-depth analysis of the trend. My starting point would be the issues in your organization or any organization. What are the burning issues in our organization? But how can we approach them, taking the trends and the long-term trends into account? And let's say I've not talked a lot about people analytics today, because that's you could say one of the mega long-term trends, working more analytical, working more evidence-based. But in any situation, working evidence-based, working using science and making sure that what you do, that there's proof that it will work, is always important, disregardless of where you are. But tailoring and being a true HR architect, but also being an activist, the activist part is, yeah, maybe it is difficult in our country. Maybe the laws are inhibitive. Maybe we don't have a good quality of leadership. But the activist part is that you say, well, but what can I do from my perspective to make or start making a change? So yes, a lot of differences. The trends, well, many of those trends are global trends that will evolve, and whether you want it or not, but you can use them. And in some situations, it will be difficult. So I'm not saying it will be easy.
No, yeah, I think my question was more, sorry, my question, if I rephrase it, is more, do you have any further readings to recommend? Because I do understand the trends are global, but I work for a global company, and the ask is, help us as a global organization, an American multinational, help us be that change, be that HR change to make it a better workplace. And my question is, I understand all those trends, I understand the maturity and, you know, of adoption is different and varies for many reasons. But do you have any recommendations of
Yeah, and you
fellow
can,
professors or anything?
I mean, you can read the rest of your life on the trends. So that's not the problem. You understand? There's so much material out there. My plea is don't do that.
No, my question is save me time and give me a few things.
Yeah,
the
so
key
if you
ones.
go to my website, you can find a lot of references to various trend studies.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I send it
But
on the
don't
chat.
study too much. That's the point.
Well,
Yeah,
I
I
need to
sent,
educate myself, right, to make the right decisions and do the right thing for what I need.
I sent on the chat the website of Tom so that you can stay updated on the trends. I'm sending also our upcoming sessions. So any other questions to Tom? If you want to ask about the trends that we have discussed or anything else related to specific case you're going through, the change that happened after COVID. So there's a question from Najwa. She's asking, from the HR perspective, do you see the life cycle of the employee career journey is related to age, like by age bracket? I don't know, Najwa, if you can explain.
I understand.
Okay.
This has to do with personalization and it has to do with data. Generally speaking, and that's about generational differences, it's very difficult to find evidence that if you know someone's date of birth, you can predict wishes, needs, preferences, and capabilities. For example, in the past, we have heard a lot about the millennials, as if you knew someone's date of birth, that he or she is a millennial, that you could say, we know what the millennials want. That's not true. So that has also to do with the employee journey and employee and careers. We see many employee journey projects in organizations. Most of them are still too much standardized, saying this is what we offer. And we make assumptions about what people want and what people need in different phases of their career. Generally, it's a lot better to go to the granular individual level and try to find out what people on an individual level want, need, and tailor your solutions to that. That's difficult for organizations, difficult for HR, because HR generally the roots are very much in one size fits all. It is also related to the first trend I mentioned around embracing complexity. Let's not simplify it too much and making assumptions about generational differences without too much evidence. That's simplifying things too much.
Thank you, Tom. Jad Saab, you raised your hand. So if you want to unmute yourself, please.
Yes. Hello. I didn't quite get the third part of the HR split. The three parts were operations, strategic, and the third part I didn't quite get it.
Okay, I will explain.
Responsible for success. Sorry. Yeah.
People success. So that's how can we help people to become better, happier, whatever you like to call it. So that's focused on helping people. Organizations are doing that, but they do it today often from very much the organizational perspective. How can we develop you in order to be more valuable in our organization? And that's generally a too limited view. The people, they want coaching, they want help. You can help people to become better, but that needs to be kind of separate focus and not too much connected to the other parts of HR. So it's people's success. How can we help people to become better, but not only in our organization, but becoming better more generally? I give an example, and that's always tension. There are organizations, if people express, they say, my dream is to start my own business. Then in many organizations that's but you are working for us, and what is the benefits for us to help you to start your own business? And long ago, for example, I worked in KPMG as an HR professional. And the assumption in KPMG in those days was that every young professional entering KPMG wanted to become a partner. And the whole development and the whole career progression was tailored to that. Everybody wants to become a partner. We know, unfortunately, that only 5 or 10% of the people can become a partner. But many people in KPMG in those days, and I'm sure partly also in these, they say, well, I want to work here a couple of years to do something else after that. And if you can help me to realize my dreams also outside the organization longer term, I'm quite happy to work here a couple of years and contribute to KPMG. In those days, that was taboo. In many organizations, it's still taboo to talk about dreams, developmental needs that are not connected to the organizational needs. And that's where people's success can contribute.
Thank you, Tom. Any other questions? So we have Jumana who's asking, does the size, so the number of team members of the organization, have an impact on these trends to be adopted? So let's say it's a small, very small organization. Does the size have an impact?
It's difficult to answer because it's not so much the trends are there. The application and the use of, you could say the use of the trends, of course, differs, and their size matters. But what you sometimes see that small organizations are too much focused on traditional ways to deal with their people issues. So I see quite some small organizations that are implementing HR practices from the past, where they would have an opportunity to say, well, we are small, we are flexible, we can really do things in a different way, instead of starting to implement old HR practices. So size matters, and not only size, but also growth rate, because it also matters whether you are a small organization that will continue to be small, or that you are a small organization with a lot of ambitions to grow. And what you see in those organizations, fast-growing organizations, they are always generally struggling because they don't spend enough money, time on their people issues. I'll give you an example, a Dutch example again, but that's relevant in other countries as well. And we see today in the Netherlands that fast deliverers are growing fast. That's you can order something 10 minutes. Gorillas and other Gorillas is I think a Turkish company. I don't know whether they are active in Lebanon these days, but you can order and in 10 minutes they bring it to your door. Not only food, but also you could say batteries or toothpaste or whatever you need. They are growing fast. It's a big battle. Who will become the fastest? What you see, everything is focused on growth. Everything is focused on marketing and capturing countries. What they forget is their good HR. So they treat their deliverers as shit. And even in the Netherlands, for example, what I heard and read is that they pay, that there is a big delay in payment of their people because their HR operations is not in place. And so they pay their people too late. They don't. Those companies could benefit a lot by installing good HR from the beginning and using some of the trends. Say, okay, how can we make sure that if we grow fast, that we also are an attractive employer for all the deliverers we need to bring those stuff around in 10 minutes. So yes, size matters. Size matters in relation to the issues you have on your list. So it's a long answer, but I hope it is somewhat clear.
Thank you. We have a question from Marie-Louise. She's asking, how can we train HR students or fresh graduates to develop the required skills to apply these trends?
Well, thank you for the question. It's an important question, Mohammed. And what are the skills that the HR professionals of the future need? And I can refer to one of the talks I had with Natal around that subject, the capabilities of HR. It's a small video, but many HR educational institutions today are too much focused on the past and not enough on the future. And I won't repeat everything I said there, but there are certain skill sets that are needed in every HR professional. And I will mention a couple. Of course, it has to do with, are you able to work data-driven? So it has to do with people analytics, HR analytics, methodology. That's an important part and often still underestimated. Secondly, I already mentioned design thinking and agile methodologies. Those are important in for every HR professional in the future. Thirdly, it's affinity and the willingness to dive into technology, because technology is one of the most important drivers of the change, and we better understand the technology. We better understand artificial intelligence and the possibilities and the impossibilities. I mentioned the metaverse as well. So methodology, design thinking, technology. Well, if you look at the curricula of HR professionals these days, often, well, there's not a lot of time and attention to these type of subjects. So that I would absolutely make a plea for that. There's more to say, but this is my short answer.
Thank you. Tom, actually, you mentioned last year in the trends of 2021, the hybrid office. And we have seen this actually, like there's a lot of remote work, etc. So what you didn't mention it again in 2022. Do you think this will go on like working from home, hybrid meetings, hybrid office, or we're going back to normal? Like, what's your view?
No, so I think that's why I don't mention it again, because it's more mainstream than a real trend. So trying to find hybrid solutions is clearly more mainstream at the moment. The danger is, and that's again back to adaptation and transformation, that we are not really pushing through, that we are trying to kind of pulling back. And we see that in some organizations that they say, well, yeah, but in the end, we want to have people in the office. Today, it's maybe not possible, but we want to have people in the office. A second element, and I might have mentioned it last year, is that there is quite a substantial part of the workforce where hybrid work solutions are not viable. If you look at where people work, many people work in professions where it's not possible. Many people, if you look at many people work in retail, many people work in warehouses connected to retail, the Amazon warehouses, the other warehouses. People work in healthcare, people work in transportation. So there are many professions where hybrid work solutions are not possible. We should not forget that part of the workforce. So yes, it's there to stay. Yes, hopefully we can push it further instead of trying to reverse, but do it in an intelligent way and not too much standardized, because I think that's also important, because otherwise we lose people. For some people it's very attractive, but the dog. But for other
Sorry,
people,
my dog.
that's fine. He needs to be. You need to walk the dog. But for other people, we have seen in some organizations, for example, that for young people it's more of an issue. We say, young people, they're flexible, they can work from home, whatever. But many young people have small houses. They don't have the nice home working facilities. That's one. Secondly, we need to make sure that there are connections between new and old, or experienced and inexperienced. And that does not happen if all the experienced people with big houses stay at home and all the young people come to the office. We need to make sure, and that requires design, that we make sure that people are continue to connect to each other. And we know that live connections are difficult to replace, whatever we design and how fantastic the metaverse might be.
Great, thank you. So any other questions for Tom? Any other comment? Maybe personal experience, something you're going through, like maybe you're putting the strategy for this year, the HR strategies. So what are your, priorities? You can ask anything. Hamad is asking, how can we start moving in a healthy way from the traditional appraisal performance management to a continuous feedback in the organization where most leaders are Generation X and most employees are Generation Z?
Yeah, that's a big question. One, I don't want to talk too long about it, but one element is to make sure it helps to split the performance management process. Because often today, still the traditional performance management process is too much a combination of several processes. And so one important process in every organization is goal setting. What do we agree? What are you going to do? And how does that fit in the picture of the organization? That's around goal setting for teams, goal setting for individuals. More and more organizations use processes like OKR, objectives and key results for that. So that's one process. Another process has to do with reward. We have to reward people and we have to make sure their salaries are at the right level, that they get rewarded for the work they have done. That's another process. Often, of course, connected to OKR, because there you can find out what people have done and how they have contributed. Then the feedback around how can we help you to become better? And I've made a plea for that in the people success area. It helps to carve that out, because if you mix it too much, OKR, feedback, financial things, well, it becomes too blurry and that's not very helpful. So that would be part of an answer to start splitting the processes and then redesign in an intelligent way, you call it healthy way, using design thinking, because there it's also important. What do people in your organization find important? What do they like? What do they want to have? How do they want to have it? Because also there we say, you say continuous feedback, but there are people who don't want the continuous feedback all the time. So please, I know my job. I want to do my job, and don't come with me with feedback all the time. So also there, standardization is not very helpful. But there are people who really benefit and want continuous feedback. Start with the people who really want something instead of designing something for the whole organization, and where people. I want to have one additional remark here. What I also see, you mentioned in your question, traditional Gen X managers, etc. And we also impose, and I mentioned that in the leadership models, I see many organizations where they say, all our leaders need to be good coaches. And we know that many leaders, many managers are not good coaches, and we can do what we want, but well, we might change it a little bit, but not fantastically, and that is not helpful. So let's put the coaching and the feedback responsibilities with the people who really like it and who want it and who can do it in a good way. And let's not say, yeah, but every man. So design your process in such a way that you really use the strengths of people. And that could also be HR. And I know that there are organizations, yeah, but HR, they should stay out of this process. They should control it, they should design it, but they should not be the people who work on the feedback and give people feedback and help people to gather the feedback. Well, I think in some cases, HR is very well equipped to do it, a lot better than managers in organizations.
Thank you. Tom, I have a question. Recently, I was doing an HR consultancy for a company in Europe, that is working 100% remotely. So there are no offices, it's only virtual. So do you think that it would be possible in the future, like short future, to have a position as HR manager for different like people as 100% remote HR?
Absolutely.
Or it's challenging?
No, I think that, absolutely. Because HR can add value. I go back partly to the split, because you could say, oh, what can they do? What should they do? Of course, in operations, because still in that remote organization, people need to be hired, people need to be paid, people work processes need to be organized. So there's a lot of work to be done. That becomes even more challenging in a remote setting. People have to collaborate, you have to organize feedback, etc. So it's very important. You need a strategic role that's around, hey, how do we make sure there is coherence in that group of remote people? How do they know that they are part of a bigger story? And the people's success, the personal advice becomes more and more important, especially in remote settings. And because the danger in those type of situations is the disconnect. How do you keep people attached? How do you connect people? Yes, and that's typically an area where HR can contribute. No, so absolutely, I think there is absolutely a role for HR in those type of organizations. Absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you. Michael Shamas is asking about empathy. What advice can you impart toward the HR professional and the HR team to have a greater degree of trust throughout the organization and all stakeholders? So how to increase trust? Is this what you mean?
Yeah, and that's, I don't want to repeat myself continuous, but one of the elements I continue to say is be very clear what you're doing, why you're doing it. And so the people success element is there. It should be very clear. You're there to help the people. And you're not there to report on what you are speaking to people, to the organization, etc., etc. And that's often where the trust level start to go down, because people don't, there are quite some organizations where people don't trust HR, and where HR is more seen as the allies of management than of the allies of the staff. And I think that's very unfortunate, but that has happened, and that is partly because many HR professionals say, yeah, we are important, we want to be management, we need to be in the management team, so they looked for association with management more than association with the people. And I think that's an issue, because if the trust is not there, well, you can do all kinds of things. So that it helps to be more explicit and to be more clear what you are doing, why you are doing it, and how you will deal with your knowledge, your data about the people in the organization, and not report it back all the time in big reports to the organization.
So you're saying transparency. Transparency is key.
Transparency is key, and role. Transparency about what am I doing, why am I doing it, and what will I do with the results. And that's often, transparency is often, the whole area of talent management is one of those areas where there's often not enough transparency. So there's a lot of talk about people, and there are reports and 9 grids and whatever, but what are the benefits for the people? A lot of analytics is the same danger. There's a lot of data gathered about people. There's a lot of reports about people, but what are the benefits for the people? And that has to do absolutely with transparency, saying, well, transparency is also what data are we gathering? What are we doing with the data? What data do we have of you? And what are we doing with the data? Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, like if we want to talk a bit about the remote work again, so, and the leadership style. So what are your recommendations or the changes you have noticed regarding the leadership style? Like also another question about the 9 to 5, you know, a typical employee versus the employee of the future, if you want, or the end of the employee. So those are 2 separate questions.
Yeah, yeah. I think, and if I repeat myself a couple of times, but a key element continues always to be personalization. And personalization is, let's not judge people. There are people who want a job from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, where they can do their job, where they maybe have a boss who tells them what to do, and they go home and do different things at home after that period. And they maybe also prefer to do it not remote, but in an office or in a factory or elsewhere. Let's not judge that. Let's not say, yeah, but this is not, because there are many jobs.
Of course, it's needed also.
It's needed, yeah? So let's not judge it, and let's make sure that also those people can work in good conditions. Often an issue. If you look at the work conditions in many warehouses, well, that's not the situations we like. And then big companies, I won't mention names, they say, oh yeah, we are so employee-centric. But if we look at what's happening in the warehouses, big question mark around it. So let's not standardize. That's one element. That's also, but that's the old element. The good news is that in the COVID crisis, people and teams working more remote have shown that they are able to do it. That has to do with the leadership transformation I described. So more self-management, more distributed leadership instead of centralized leadership. So that has to do with the way you are organized and the way you organize in your organization. So give room for distributed leadership instead of the traditional leadership styles. So that's a second element that is very important, but not so easy, because the traditional view on leadership is very dominant. And also in the COVID crisis, we have seen that also on a governmental level, for example, people are saying, we need strong leaders and we need people who tell us what to do, etc., etc. So there's always tension there. So let's not generalize. Let's look at the different task at hand. What you're saying, Randa, is some situations are very, they need a more hierarchical, traditional organizing way, and other work settings, we can allow different ways. So it's diversity also in the way we organize the work. It's also diversity in what we ask of our leaders. And that's back to the classical situational leadership type of models.
I have a question related to the payments. I've seen many companies in Europe who started to pay their employees in digital currencies. I don't know if anyone of the audience is already have this practice. So instead of paying in cash because of the banking, I mean, like the change in this area, in Lebanon, we have a total failure of the banking system. But what do you think? Do you think it will be a trend to be paid in digital currencies?
I don't have a strong view on that. I think if you look at the need of people, the need of people is that they are paid in a good currency. Yeah. So
yeah. Like cryptocurrency is not yet on the table.
So investment, I would say, as a company should not make investment decisions for people. So they should not invest on the behalf of people. That's again back to transparency. It might sound sexy to pay in digital currencies, which all might be good as long as the currencies increase in value. If they decrease in value, there's an issue. So I would be very careful here, but that's only my personal, not very substantiated opinion. I can imagine that in a situation like Lebanon, high inflation regions, there the question is, how can we pay our people in more more
stable
what?
In more stable
that might be petrol
system.
That might be petrol, not digital currency. That might be petrol, or it might be something different. Or food. Yeah,
this comes as extras, but it's an interesting, I mean, because I've seen this in different companies, especially people who work in like, blockchain, NFT, crypto, Bitcoin. They pay already their employees in this and they are very happy about it.
Yeah, so, but they understand it. They understand it.
Yeah, because it's their field mostly.
Yeah, it's their field. So there I can imagine it, but also there it backfires enormously if it doesn't work, because people need to live, people need to eat, and you cannot. Yeah, you need to be able to pay your daily life.
Yeah, actually, there was the first ATM in cryptocurrency in Lebanon. It's already here, so people can just use it. And some restaurants
I can imagine that Lebanon is a good, probably a good testing ground. Absolutely.
Yeah, and Lebanon, some restaurants are already accepting to be paid in digital currencies. So this is like a new, escape from the banking system. Actually, if the audience is interested, we're going to have also a session about NFT, the new trend in the blockchain, which is non-fungible tokens. So I sent you the link. If you have technical people in the team and interested, it's also a free talk that we do in collaboration with Sardar Bank all over the year. We do 2 free talks every year. So just a difference, we do free talks, but the workshops, of course, are not free. So we have workshops, advanced workshops, full day trainings, in-house, etc. But we do sometimes some talks just to keep the, especially in this situation, to keep people informed. Any other question for Tom? Like, we had a very interesting discussion. Let's see if there are other questions. So I will basically, I'm gonna just put all the trends again, the 10 trends that we have discussed for 2022, and see if you have any final questions.
And is this session recorded?
Yes, it's on YouTube. So I'm gonna send you after this session, I will send you the link. Usually we don't share the recording, but this one exceptionally is on YouTube, so it's public, and you can, I'm gonna send you the link, you can share it with your friends and post it on your social media. So these are the 10 trends that we have already discussed. So just as a summary, number 1 is HR embraces complexity. Number 2, HR as activists. 3, HR for the ecosystem. 4, the end of the employee. 5, Metaverse. 6, forgiving technologies. 7, recruiting for diversity. 8, time for some real empathy. 9, life coaching provided by, just a second, I lost it, provided by employers. And 10, the split of HR. So these are the 10 HR trends for 2022. Any final question before we close?
All right.
I have a final question. Like, Tom, I would like to see what are your lessons learned from the COVID crisis that we went through? Like, did you notice a major change in the way HR function and works before and after COVID? So can we say there is before and after COVID, or it's like not that big change?
One, there is no after COVID, so we're I think that's one lesson.
It's in COVID.
We're in COVID, and it will never go. I think yes, HR and organizations have shown their resilience, have shown that they were able to do things a lot faster. So I think that is the good news. We generally, HR is not so fast, but in the crisis, HR has shown that they can do things a lot faster. So I think that is good news. The importance of HR in most organizations has increased because people have seen that, okay, well, we need HR to deal with it. We need HR to deal with the people issues and make sure our people are attached to the organization. So yes, I think the danger, but I described it already, is that we don't use the opportunity to really transform, and that would be a missed opportunity. So, but that's a plea to all the people. Let's make sure that we really continue the transformation that has partly been accelerated in the COVID-19 crisis.
Thank you.
I thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Hopefully next year.
So we see you next year. We're waiting forward for 2023 for the HR trends. So thank you all for attending. I would like to remind you, if you would like to check the website of Tom, you can check hrtrendinstitute.com, where he has some videos, some nice articles as well. And also I advise you to check also our website with upcoming workshops. I'm going to send you an email with all the information. And if you would like also, if you have any other question or anything you would like to inquire about, you can feel free to contact us on info@ihavelearned.me. I'm writing that down. And make sure you follow us on social media. We have one education post every week, different topics, and many interesting topics coming soon. So please stay tuned. And any final word, Tom, before we close?
No.
Okay.
Success. Take care.
Thank you, and see you all very soon.
Thank you
Bye.
so